Hey there, welcome to episode 100 of Fresh Air at 5. This episode is a celebration for me, Brian Carpenter, as I reflect and connect and take in some podcast content. I'm going to be doing the regular things that I do on my podcast, but I've also got some voices of some people that have replied and sent in some feedback, audio feedback for me. So those people are Cam Mechanicans, Cameron Ross, Tim Cavey, Scott Noons, Eric Geis, Tim Stevenson, and okay, there's somebody else I missed that I'm really sorry. But you're going to hear their voices as we get into the podcast here. There's 7 of them, and it's important that I tell you that. So thank you so much, and without further ado, here goes episode 100, Fresh Air at 5.
I'm AJ Bianco from Podcast PD, a part of the Education Podcast Network, just like the show you're listening to now. Shows in the network are individually owned, and opinions expressed may not reflect others. Find other interesting education podcasts at edupodcastnetwork.com.
Welcome to Fresh Air at 5, the podcast. I'm your host, Brian Carpenter. Fresh Air at 5 is my regular attempt to exercise by walking about my neighborhood to take in podcast content, then reflect in an unedited video, which I finally post to my Twitter channel. This podcast will be a regular collection of the audio from these self-view videos. You can follow me on Twitter at FreshAirAt5 or check out my website, briancarpenter.com, for other content I have created and collected. Hey, PLN, December 5, 2022. It's Monday morning, out for Fresh Air at 5 this morning. It's -4 fresh air, and it's actually not too bad. The wind's not blowing too hard, so that makes it fine. Well, everybody listens pretty much lives where it's cold, except, me. I live where it's not so cold because of my proximity to Vancouver in the lower mainland of British Columbia. And thankful for that. Thankful that it's not super cold, but also, we do get a touch of winter. So I do enjoy that. Makes it feel like a normal winter because of where I grew up in Calgary. All right, so moving on. This is episode 100 of Fresh Air at 5. As we move through this week, you're going to hear the voices of some listeners and people that have contributed to Fresh Air at 5 over the years, and you'll hear their voices as we go through this segment. I've reached out, asked for some voice files from them, and I'll be sharing those as we go along. All right, this morning as I'm walking, I listened to episode 214 of the House of EdTech podcast, and Chris Nessie, the pod father, is the one that actually helped me press send my first podcast and trailer to Anchor to get it going back on January 5th, 2000. So thank you, Chris, for your support over the years. All right, in this episode, Chris talks about lessons he's learned from student podcasting in his building with the Zebra Podcast Network at his high school, and what's involved in that. It's fantastic. It's also great to hear, and I'm going to have my students, Chris, take a listen to this episode as we start digging into podcasting in MySpace. I was given some money so that we could get some gear, getting a Rodecaster Pro 2, 4 mics, 4 headsets, and we're going to get a podcast rig set up and a place to do that coming up. All right, I got more to say, so I'm going to keep right back. 1 second. I'll be right back. One more thing for December 5, 2022. Continuing my thoughts on episode 214 of the House of EdTech. If you're concerned about how to get going, Chris has put an offer out there that says, he's said, reach out to him if you have questions of how to do this, how you can get started. He would love to talk to you. People, it's actually true. Chris is authentic in what he says. If you reach out to him, he'll spend time with you. It was a cold winter night in 2019 when I got a call from Chris on the EdTech Smackdown, which is coming up actually for this year on December 18th. So I've got to get my audio file to him. Haven't done that. Sorry, Chris. But he called me out on that podcast as he was talking with Derek Larson. And he's like, Brian Carpenter, you need to start a podcast. And one thing led to another. And we sat down over Zoom that Christmas. He in New Jersey, me in Abbotsford, Canada, British Columbia. And we talked about podcasting. He supported and got me going. Had me invited to a podcaster summit the day of the launch. And it was awesome to have his support. So big shout out to Chris Nesi. You're going to actually hear Chris Nesi's voice soon, right after I'm done recording today, and you'll hear his voice and his thoughts about Fresh Air at 5. So also, longtime listener Cami Cannikins, who is the host of the Prairie Rose Possibilities podcast. It's coming up soon for season 3. Go check out the work that she's doing there. She talks about projects that are going on in the Prairie Rose School District in Southern Alberta in Canada, and awesome to hear her. She's been a long-time listener, and you're going to hear her voice coming up here soon, because she is actually the one that I am for certain of that has listened to every one of my episodes on Fresh Air at 5. All right, other things going on in episode 214 of the House of EdTech. Chris talks about, year-end cleanup of your social medias, talks about your Google Drive, going through, clearing out some big files, and seeing how you can consolidate and streamline some of your workflow. All right, that's all I got for right now. Got one more to listen to. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. One more thing for December 5, 2022, as I'm walking along here, I listened to episode 237 of the STEM Everyday podcast with Chris Woods. And Chris, big hey to you. Hope you're doing well. And wow, man, 237 episodes. That's awesome. I'm just crossing episode 100 here this week. So I have a ways to go. But hey, you were back with me when I first started at Fresh Air at 5. On Twitter. I had the hashtag that I had started because I was reflecting on podcasts and putting out, graphic tweets about things I've been learning on podcasts. And you're like, hey, Brian, you should probably go grab some social media tags for yourself so that they don't disappear and people scoop those things up. So Fresh Air at 5, at Fresh Air at 5 on Twitter, Chris, was, inspired by you and you saying, hey, Brian, you should probably go do this. So people, if you got an idea, share it with somebody and encourage them to push forward. So yes, Chris, on episode 237 of the STEM Everyday podcast, you talk with fashion to astro physics and space person, Athena Brensberger. And I probably said your name wrong, Athena, but Athena, I was impressed and inspired by what you had to say about how we share the joy of science with kids in our schools. And, my education career started with me being a science and innovator in schools with Science World in Vancouver. And when I was a research scientist, my company supported us by allowing us 3 volunteer days to go and talk with high school students and students in schools, elementary and middle, about science and what does it mean to be a chemist. And that really changed the trajectory of my life because I saw that I enjoyed education. So without that opportunity at a museum to talk with people, I wouldn't be where I am today. So fantastic to hear your inspiration. Science communication is so important because we can have the greatest ideas, but if we can't communicate them, it doesn't matter. So Astro Stevenson, take a listen to what Athena Brensberger has to say. All right. Thank you all. Have a fab day. Bye-bye.
Hey, Brian. Chris Nesi here from the House of EdTech podcast. And first and foremost, congratulations on your 100th episode of Fresh Air at 5. Super excited to play a small part in the existence of this show. I know that since we have talked about podcasting over the years, it only seems like it's been 100 episodes since we were on a live stream and we were talking about creating a podcast. And you took that leap of faith. And I'm happy that I was able to push you, along with so many others who have encouraged you to put your voice out there. And I couldn't be more proud of you. I'm also excited that you're a part of the Education Podcast Network. And I'm glad you're in my life. And you and your podcast make my world and the whole world a better place. Here's to 100 more. I'll talk to you soon, and congratulations again.
Hello, Brian Carpenter and Fresh Air at 5. This is Cami Cannikins, and I am excited to wish you a happy 100 and let you know that I have indeed been listening to Fresh Air at 5 since episode 1. It happened that day in January that I was out for a walk, my own fresh air, and I came across your Fresh Air at 5. And what struck me, Brian, is that I had just led a workshop for your district at the end of December, and it was about escape rooms and building your own escape room. And your very first episode was about how you had just gone through Christmas and you had done an escape room for your family. And I thought, wow, look at this guy. He actually learns something and then puts it into action. And so I just thought that was somebody that I could listen to. And so I've been listening ever since, and I love your podcast overview of other podcasts, and I have indeed listened to several other podcasts because of your recommendations. And, Brian, I just have to say that you've been so kind in that listening to the little podcast that I have, which is really mostly focused around my school district in Southern Alberta. And you listen to those from BC and find something interesting in them. And so that's just such a neat thing. So congratulations to you. I look forward to listening to the next 100.
Hey, PLN Tuesday, December 6, 2022. Good morning to you, -1 Celsius. The wind is not blowing. We have clouds overhead, and it's quite calm this morning for Fresh Air at 5. All right, there's the weather. There's a little catch up on how nice my morning is as I'm walking. It's cool, though, and that's okay. Get some fresh air. I'm also getting some good learning in my ears as I listen to Science 360 episode 63 as my friend Tim Stevenson, who teaches at a school down the road from me, like just down in the next community, meets with Maria Vamvalis to talk about climate change and about climate research and climate anxiety and climate action and how we need to approach our curriculum with an open-mindedness of not teaching what has been in the past, but taking chemistry and connecting it to the now of how is our environment doing, how are relationships in our world affecting the trajectory of sustainability on our planet. This is an incredible episode as Tim and Maria talk about climate change and about how we can look at both sides of a coin. And do we need to give credence to oil and gas in our classrooms, or do we need to talk about sustainability and moving forward in the future? Yes, oil and gas is involved in a whole lot of the plastics and the materials that are around us that we do need, but how can we take it from using fossil fuels that we're burning to create carbon dioxide and greenhouse gases and things that are affecting our climate? Where I live, as Tim talked about in his podcast, I live just above where the floodplain was last year that wiped out a massive part of our agriculture here in the Fraser Valley. I travel through an area that he was talking about to go play in the summertime and go snowshoeing that's been affected by the floods. So much to listen to. Take a listen, and thank you, Maria. Thank you, Tim, for your thoughts. Peace out. Bye. One more thing for December 6, 2022. I want to talk about my relationship with Tim Stevenson, Astro Stevenson, and how Tim has made a difference in my life. And as you'll hear in a little bit, you'll hear his voice on the podcast that's coming out this Friday. So if you're not listening to the podcasts that come out on Friday night for Fresh Air at 5 and just listening to the dailies, you're going to miss what Tim has to say. So Tim, listen up to your voice that's coming out on Friday night. The way that you're approaching science education, Tim, is very inspiring. It's very hopeful. As we learn about relationships, and that's what you and Maria talked about in this episode of Hope Never Dies, or Hope Dies Last. Hope Dies Last was about, the relationship that we have to our environment, the relationship that we have to our land and the earth and to each other, and how all these relationships are interconnected and affect and make a difference. This coming winter, we're going to grow some coho salmon in our school and show the little ones how salmon can grow and a little bit a part of that circle of life of the salmon ecosystems, and how can we, take them to a stream and show them that a stream is a place where little salmon can live. Looking at, as you do at your school, taking the students outside a lot to look at the trees and the environment around the school. And pretty cool how you took your chemistry class outside to clip the English ivy off that tree and watch how it is affected by the things that we do to it to help put a balance of, the invasive species and maybe removing some of those that choke out the life around that's natural and resident here. All right, I can go on and on. Hey, Tim, thanks so much. Appreciate it. So, again, take a listen to episode 100 this coming week. We are in the episode 100th recording cycle right now. And weather permitting, I'll be out here the next 3 mornings to give you a full and awesome episode coming up. All right, have a good day. Bye. The last thing for December 6th, 2022, still thinking about episode 63 of Science 360 with Tim Stevenson as he talks with Maria Vamvalis out of, I think you're out in Ontario, Maria, and talking about awareness and understanding of our natural world around us, and how does affecting mindsets of kids and teachers in our education system to be mindful of the world around us and the effect that we have on it and the effect it has on us is important and significant. And if our kids can leave school knowing that there are things out in the world that's affected by the actions of human beings, and that we as human beings, as single human beings, can do a little bit of a part, I think that's so important. Relationships are key. If we don't understand those relationships, then just learning about science facts and that, we put them in the bottle and put them back on the shelf, labeled science knowledge, and then we open up the social studies containers off that other shelf and don't connect the two things, what does that do? Thinking about the movie Avatar that James Cameron produced, and the new Avatar movie's coming out here at Christmas time. I watched that movie and it was in another world, but it was about colonialism and about taking what we want and understanding that taking what we want is not good. But we've seen that in our own planet, in the recent years, in the past 150 years, that we've taken what we want without understanding that the taking affects what the earth is giving. And, lettuce shortages today. We've got flooding. We've got heat domes. We've got fall that happened for maybe a mere 2 weeks in late November because of things called climate change. I think it's happening, and I know it's happening because I'm watching evidence of that. All right, that's all. Thanks, Tim. Got me thinking. Okay, bye-bye.
Hey Brian, Tim Stevenson here, and congratulations on Fresh Air at 5, number 100. I remember the first time I saw you was soon after I had recorded an episode with Ray and Jeff on the Teach Better podcast, and within like 24 hours, all of a sudden there's this crazy guy walking down the street talking about me. I thought, who is this guy? And so at first I thought it was something like you're getting mad at me or something, and I thought, well, I better listen to this, see what he has to say. And then I realized, oh, I see what you're doing. You're actually listening and then promoting podcasts and things that you learn. I think that's really cool. So I've been listening ever since. And even I've even done some of the walks with you, which is also really cool. And so thanks for that opportunity and for having an opportunity to promote my podcast, Science 360. Brian, you're doing a great thing. You inspire me with your dedication and your discipline. You're out there every morning, rain or shine. Oh, I guess it's never really shining at that time of day. But congratulations, and keep going. I know it's a tough thing to do to get up every morning, but keep going, and a lot of people are benefiting from it. So congratulations, Brian.
Good morning. It's December 7, 2022, out for fresh air at 5 this morning. It is plus 1 degrees and foggy. And so it's warming up. We are expecting rain here. So all the snow is going to get washed away. And yes, it'll be easier to walk. It's a little crispy this morning, a bit icy in some patches, but overall making good progress and it's all safe. All right, as I'm listening to episode 126 of YOUTech, the podcast, I am struck with the idea of blended learning. That's what Eric and Nick are talking about. They bring us a full episode of blended learning definitions. What is it? What's the benefits of it? A breakdown, and then also models for how we can use blended learning in our space. And gents, fantastic. You got the flipped classroom, station rotation, and also playlists. So these three things are, have been in my place over the years, not exclusively for any period of time, but they've been there. And when I first started teaching, we didn't have tech in our classrooms. The closest tech we had in our classrooms was my teacher laptop. And as I started teaching, I saw that a couple teachers had class websites. And so I went and bought briancarpenter.com. And if you go there, it's a stale right now blog site. There'll be some posts coming up in the new year here with one word. But I would take in on that website, put a post that was the shape of the day for each of my classes. My students became accustomed to the fact that I would refer to my website, and when they were away sick, they would go to my website and get the content that we talked about and be able to catch up and be with the rest of the class. So that was an initial foray. That's, I think, like one step in the direction of blended learning. Using tech is so important. All right, you're going to hear Eric's voice in a bit on the podcast. And thanks, Eric and Nick. Appreciate you guys. Peace. Bye. One more thing for December 7th, 2022. All right, I wasn't done. You heard me abruptly stop, but I wasn't done. All right, so blended learning. It's a significant part of how I do things. We watch our students, and I watch my own kids take time to learn stuff on their own. They are accustomed to watching videos, learning from others, learning in spaces that are not the classroom. But as teachers, we need to be intentional about how we provide that content and that support for them. I like the whole Screencastify and screencasting tools that we have access to, that we can create these quick videos. In my digital media classes, I make videos on how to do different techniques, and then I can provide that to the class. I might even show that in class as a way of them being able to see the content for the first time, and then those that are away can watch the videos and be able to learn those skills. So, the screencasting bit, that's significant and important. It's kind of like the flipped classroom idea, but not as intentional as that. Challenge in our spaces and things that I see is student buy-in to the flipped classroom. But I guess that's a practice, sort of a thing that you got to manage. Also, the equity issue is, does everybody have access to reliable, fast internet at home that allows you to use videos and content that they're learning outside of class? How are you providing that content? All right, so those are some things that are important. Back to my class website, back at the beginning, I would put those things on there, and it was almost like a flipped classroom-ish, because students would come back after being sick, being caught up, and having their things that are there. And the fact that I was just using technology, a place to put my shape of the day with links to my PowerPoint and the homework assignments that were in paper workbooks at those times, that was a part of blended learning for me. All right. Eric and Nick, appreciate you guys. Episode 126 of YOUTech, the podcast. Peace. Bye. The last thing for December 7, 2022, wrapping up Fresh Air at 5. I'm near home, and just to let you know, Laney Rowell, I am walking and it's safe. It's a little bit icy in places, but much better than it was even last week when I was talking and reflecting on other episodes 33 and 34 of Evolving with Gratitude. So this morning I listened to Evolving with Gratitude with Laney Rowell and guest Allison Posey. And Allison Posey is a neuroscience brain expert, and she works with CAST and UDL, and she talks about gratitude being taking stock of the little things, you know, the small moments that are around us, that so that we don't miss them. You know, she talks about how those little moments can make such a big difference. Just one more thing, just another little bit, you know. And as she talks about her kids that have all already grown now and that are gone, and that she misses, you know, picking up the socks and doing the dishes for the kids and things like that. And so, you know, Allison, that's so important. My one word for 2022 is presence, and not like as a gift, but as being wholly where you are, completely where you are at that moment. And right now I'm out walking. It's plus 1 degree Celsius, a bit foggy in the sky, and the air is crisp. My hand is cold, and I'm noting that. Recording here with my phone, and being present in my morning walk, taking advantage and enjoying these moments. I'm listening to a podcast, and I'm captivated by the fact that I can be present right now. So that was my one word for 2022, if gratitude is a big part of presence. It's about paying attention to the moments, the little things. And so I appreciate you fleshing that out for yourself. Also, as you both are talking, UDL is so important. So thankful for voice to text, things that, you know, we take for granted today that were accommodations a few years ago. All right, have a happy day, ladies. Have a good one. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
What is up, Fresh Air at 5 listeners and Brian Carpenter? First, I want to just say a huge thank you to Brian for the content that he produces every single week. It is amazing not only to hear what he thought about the podcast that Nick and I run, which is Got Tech, the podcast, but also he has introduced me to so many other podcasts that I normally probably wouldn't have found on my own. I love how he gives a little bit of a summary. It's almost like a cliff hook of the episode, but then he also puts his own thoughts into it. His reflections allow me to reflect and allows me to grow as a professional. Brian, I really appreciate everything that you do, and I am a huge fan. Keep up the good work. Congratulations on 100 episodes.
Hey, PLN, December 8, 2022. This morning, Fresh Air at 5 is quite damp, plus 3 Celsius. And I'm cutting my walk short because I'm soaked and I'm only halfway through my walk. I shortened my loop up so that I could assess the weather, and that assessment has having me go home right now. So anyhow, it's a little bit shorter, which means that I didn't listen to a full episode of the Tom Schimmer podcast this morning. But Tom, I caught most of it. And episode 93 of the Tom Schimmer podcast, instructional coaches, I would encourage you to listen to this podcast and take in what Kristine Tesoriero Mizzone, I apologize, Kristine, I just botched your name. I really apologize for that, but that's the best I got right now. And she talks about coaching and being an instructional coach and working with other instructional coaches and growing your craft as you work with educators and teachers in their schools. Yes, people are competent in their jobs, but the perception is that if there's a coach working with the teacher, that teacher needs that help as opposed to desires that help. As we look at athletes and we go, oh, well, they're elite athletes. They have coaches, play, hockey players in the NHL, World Cup soccer players, those people. And that's different than what, the regular person that would need a coach. So destigmatizing coaching, I think, is significant and important. And having good people around you, having coaches around you in your district that can raise you up, I think, is so important, having regular meetings. At the beginning, Tom, you talked about celebrating your wins and how, some people that will criticize you for celebrating your little wins and posting your successes are those that are not at the place that you are. I've seen this in my life, but I'm celebrating my wins. Big win this week, episode 100, Fresh Air at 5. All right, gotta go. Have a fabulous day. Okay, bye-bye. One more thing for December 8, 2022, as I'm walking, I'm thinking about the voices you're going to hear next on my podcast coming out this Friday. It's weird if you're listening to this on Friday that I just said that, but I've got the voice of Cameron Ross from Australia, and Cameron is a teacher, educator in Australia, and he started listening to Fresh Air at 5 a bit ago. And Cam, I appreciate hearing some feedback. As a podcaster, sometimes it feels like we're speaking into the void, and who's listening? So appreciate that, Cam, and kudos to you, and thanks so much for being a supporter of Fresh Air at 5. Another supporter is my buddy Scott Nunes, and Scott, educator, has moved to the corporate, working for Canva in the education department, and that's awesome. I love Canva. Can't say I love Canva. I really, really like it, but I'm on my way to loving it because I've been an Adobe Spark guy. So, that's like Pepsi, Coke. There's Cola, and they both do a great job at what they do. But Scott has been a friend through podcasting, and Scott and I have never met face to face. We need to change that, Scott. But the point is Scott's got a shout out and some words to say about Fresh Air at 5. So you'll hear their voices right away. All right. We got another day to go in this week before Fresh Air at 5 episode 100 is published, and I am celebrating this win for me because it's been a long journey getting here. It's been an awesome journey, so I'm thankful for all the people around me. All right, peace, bye.
Hi Brian, this is Cameron Ross from Melbourne, Australia. Just wishing you a big congratulations on episode 100. What Fresh Air at 5 means to me is someone that demonstrates passion for their education and a willingness to share what they learn each and every day, and therefore each and every week. And for me, that gives me the opportunity and the passion to continue learning from you, a very amazing educator. And I can't wait to continue listening to you each and every week. Congratulations again on episode 100. Cheers, Cameron Ross. Thank you, Brian.
Hey everyone, Scott Nunes here, host of Education Today. Congrats, Brian, on episode 100 of Fresh Air at 5. The thing I like most about Fresh Air at 5 is that Brian takes these huge, longer formatted podcasts and really finds like the juicy bits and pieces in there that are most practical and synthesizes that information and shares it back out in bite-sized chunks. So for most of us that are on the go, this is an amazing way to just take in great information and have it delivered consistently and regularly. Brian, I appreciate you. Congrats again. And here's to the next 100.
Hey PLN, December 9, 2022. Good morning and welcome to the final segment of episode 100 of Fresh Air at 5. I can't believe it. I can't believe it. Okay, I could go on like I can't believe it for a while, but I will in a little bit, and I'll put that in the podcast so maybe you don't have to listen to it right now. As I'm walking, I opened my podcatcher and I saw someone that I admire with the work that she does, and it's Lindsay Titus. And Lindsay, good morning to you. I hope you're doing well today. And I saw the Define University podcast, episode 99, sitting there in my podcatcher. I remember the anticipation of getting to 99. I remember what it's like to be thinking about how we are, almost there at 100. And what does that mean? So if you follow my journey recently at all, you know that I've been working towards this day about just being able to keep doing Fresh Air at 5 consistently, methodically, and making a difference in my life. So, Lindsay, I want to say that you have inspired me over the past couple of years of me listening to Define University podcast. This is the only way. Also through a conference, you were a guest at the MyPETA conference in the past when we had some guests on there. Actually, the DL Symposium it wasn't the MyPETA conference, DL Symposium. And thank you for being a guest, a presenter at our conference. And, the message that you talk about knowing who you are is so very important. As my podcast coach, I want to say that you've helped me make a difference in my life. You talk about the 4 A's, about awareness, about acknowledgement, you got awareness, acknowledgement, there's alignment, and then there's action, something like that. But there's 4 A's, and those 4 A's are a model, but I like how it's so simple. Hey, Lindsay, I want to say thank you. I want to say I appreciate you, and I want to say thank you for your podcast. And people, take a listen to this. Gold here, people. Gold, gold, gold. Okay, bye. One more thing for December 9, 2022. Jake, you get one more thing this morning. I was listening to the EdTech News Brief with Jake Miller, and Jake brings us the news about EdTech and keeps it brief. I am a news briefer. Jake, I'm going with that. It's good. I'll try that on. Okay, that's what he was saying in his podcast. This morning, as I was listening, Jake, you brought us Quizizz updates. Fantastic. Appreciate hearing the updates because, for someone moving at the pace that I am through things, I don't get to catch up on the updates. I'm not a Quizizz user yet, but that will come, possibly. What I did hear you talk a lot about in this episode was PDF editing in Chromebooks. Well, as my district is moving away from the Google into Microsoft, that is a less desirable thing, but cool for all people that are still using Google for workspace, for education, and the fact that we can still do that. Can we do that, Jake, in our browsers in our PCs or our Macs? I'm wondering that, because that would be kind of cool. If we can do it in Chromebooks, can we do it in the Chrome browser? That's a question that I'll have to just take a look at. All right, as you kept on talking about Book Creator, I've heard about Book Creator. I've seen its, use a little bit. I haven't used it a lot myself because I'm like, well, there's other tools like Google Slides that you could use to do things, but accessibility for young ones to do graphic stuff and come out with EPUBs and stuff like that gives an option, an opportunity. So this is great. What you were talking about, though, was the fact that Book Creator's leveling up and providing opportunity to import PDFs, etc. All right, Jake Miller. This is on episode 100 of Fresh Air at 5. This episode, the full episode, will be coming out tonight at midnight. And you are part of the celebration. I want to say thank you, Jake, for all the input you've had in my learning and my professional development over the years as I've listened to the EdTech News Brief and I've listened to the Educational Duct Tape podcast. Peace out, brother. Have a great Merry Christmas. Okay, bye-bye. All right, another one more thing for December 9, 2022 as I'm concluding my listening today. I still got a couple kilometers to go before I get home. I was thinking about, 100 episodes of Fresh Air at 5. This is the part where Carpenter gets reflective, more reflective than normal. Thinking about how this journey of podcasting has been. And, it all started with taking one more step, as Tom Schimmer talked about. It talks about, getting going and trying something and seeing how it fits. It was December of 2019 as I was listening to the House of EdTech, and Kristine called me out and said, "Hey, Carpenter, you should have a podcast." And I went, "What am I going to podcast about?" We met. He talked me into giving it a go and putting some content like this together into a one audio file and getting a brand and making some cover art and a podcast logo, graphic. And he sat with me, over Zoom. He was in New Jersey. I was here in Abbotsford. And we pressed play. We pressed send it. And Anchor received my very first file, my trailer. So that gives a bit about background about, why I'm doing what I do. It's my purpose hasn't changed a whole lot since I started, but I am a better person because of that. I want to thank Kristine, super awesome. I want to thank everybody that's had their voices in this podcast. Coming up, you're going to hear from Tim Cavey. And Tim Cavey, thank you so much, bro, for having me on your podcast, Teachers on Fire, way back a long time ago. That was episode 33 of Teachers on Fire, and I was privileged to be a guest. I was like, "What? You want me to be a guest on your podcast? What do I have to say?" Okay, so my message to all of you is you've got something to say. You have to figure out what it is and figure out a mechanism of saying so. So Tim Cavey gave me that opportunity, and the rest, as we say, is history. Okay, I got more to say, so I'll be right back. 1 second.
This is Tim Cavey from Teachers on Fire. Brian, when I think about Fresh Air at 5, I think about the ways that you are recycling and remixing learning. And that to me is really, really exciting. Not only are you casting a light on some of the great creative work and learning and innovation happening across these different podcasts and sourced by educators from around the world, but you're also doing your own learning in the process and you're remixing it. You're adding new epiphanies and perspectives on top of that, which all create a rich learning experience. Thank you for what you are sharing. Keep up the great work.
The last thing for December 9, 2022. Okay, so thank you, Tim Cavey. You just heard Tim's voice as he talks about Fresh Air at 5, what it means to him. And you know what? It's a funny thing about this recording studio of mine. It's very live. It's very just the way it is. And I'm walking along the street. You hear the street noise, the beeper from the crosswalk, things like that. But that's part of the reality and what I do and how I do Fresh Air at 5. For me to carry a whole bunch of equipment, recordings and mics and mixers doesn't happen. Using my iPhone and a set of headphones and running shoes on my feet and warm clothes these days, I get out and I listen to podcasts on my earbuds. So yes, I want to say thank you to all that have had me because of my podcast, that I've been more public about just being present out on Twitter, doing this every day, building relationships. I've been privileged to be a guest on a number of podcasts. I've been a guest on Got Tech, George Koros's 3 Questions, Innovator's Mindset. I've been a guest on Education Today with Scott Noon's Ignite Education Podcast, or Ignite EdTech Podcast, and a number of different places. I am going to miss some. Kelly Croy had me on a bit ago. You can go to my website. You can see a list of the podcast places that I have been. I will get all those links up in the next bit. So if you're hearing this later, you can go see and listen to podcasts. Or you can just search Brian Carpenter, spell it properly, and put it into your favorite podcatcher, and probably a number of those will come up. Oh my goodness, I can't believe it. I want to say thank you for taking the time to be a listener of the Fresh Air at 5 podcast. If you're new and this is the first time you're hearing this, well, you don't have to go back and listen, but I thank you for continuing to listen as we move forward into the 100s. All right, have a fabulous day. And with that, Carpenter signing off for episode 100 of Fresh Air at 5. Peace. The very last thing for December 9, 2022. I can't stop talking. And as I stopped the recording a moment ago, I remembered some people that are really close and around me that I mention occasionally on my podcast, but I don't, mention them all the time. And those are my supporters in my home, I've got my wife, Wendy. I've got my kids, 3 kids, Brock, Rhea, and Gracie. And they are there, and they are like, Dad, go Dad. My wife, she's a supporter of the podcast, but she's never listened to my podcast. And I've heard other podcasters talk that way, and that's okay. That's okay. But you know what? She's supportive. She encourages me, and she cheers me on in the background. So I say thank you to my wife. Love her very much. My parents, my dad, mom and dad are big fans. Dad listens occasionally. He's like, man, Brian, you do so many amazing things. And it's, only through small steps that I do those things, Dad. All right. Just wanted to say thank you to my parents, in-laws, close family, and all that have been there to support me. My friends that cheer me on in these endeavors. So those are the people that aren't on Twitter. Those are the people that are right around me in my neighborhood. And my friend Bruce that I mentioned on, I think, episode 95 or 6. So he's a dude that is in my neighborhood, and we talk school and education, and he's an adult educator himself. All right, with that, that's all. That's the last thing I'm going to say for episode 100. All of you listeners are going to be going, nope, Carpenter's going to turn it back on. But that's it. That's all I got. So thanks so much for being here. Thanks so much. And hey, we'll see you next week for episode 101, Fresh Air at 5. Peace. Bye. As my one word for 2021 is appreciate, I appreciate you giving me a listen as I've created this podcast experience for you. It's a unique Blinkist or Cold Notes version of the content I take in, like a highlight reel, so that you can hopefully find other interesting podcasts you may not have considered before. I've recorded the specific podcast episodes in the show notes for your learning convenience. Please subscribe so you don't miss any of my upcoming episodes. And if you enjoyed this podcast and its format, share it with someone else. Tweet about your experience or give it a review on Apple Podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Fresh Air at 5 can also be found on Voice Ed Radio. Your voice is right here, and on the Education Podcast Network, Podcasts for Educators, Podcasts by Educators. I hope you have a fantastic day and get some fresh air before the day is out, and take care of yourself because you're worth it.